And we are back. Welcome to Shark Coast Tactical Podcast, episode 32. I am here with my homies. I have Omar.
Hello.
Luke Andrews.
What up?
The amazing Dean Carroll.
What's going on?
And I have Jeffrey Young, attorney at law, the Minnesota gun lawyer himself, back again.
What's up?
Welcome, Jeff.
Yes, pleasure to be here as always.
Good to see you.
Thanks for the invite.
So we brought Jeff back because we've been thinking about gun law lately. At least I have. Like, I've been thinking about different things, and I figured we would bring Jeff in. And Jeff is probably the most interesting guest that we've had. So we wanted to bring him back.
I'd agree with that.
But couple things that we should get out of the way first. Omar, tomorrow you're going to do your test for citizenship.
I am.
Can I say that? I mean, I just did, but
I mean, this won't go up, until it's over. So,
or do you have a fear of failing or
So
something?
you may be here next time, or you may not be here next
Exactly.
time. I got to tune in at the next podcast to see how his test went.
So we talked about it briefly. Omar is going to become a citizen tomorrow.
Excellent.
Or he's taking his test tomorrow. He has to drive to where?
Tampa.
Tampa. And you've been studying?
Oh yeah.
Luke,
Since I was
quick
like
question. Do it, Luke.
What?
Hit him with a question. Hit him with a question.
Give me the question.
That really fucked that up, dude.
You're an American. You should know this.
All right. What's one of the functions of the executive branch?
Signing bills into law.
All right.
True.
What's in the U.S. territory besides Puerto Rico?
Guam.
What about besides Guam?
They only ask you for one answer.
Okay.
Greenland? Oh, wait, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
What is
Canada?
it?
Not yet.
What does it feel like? Like, can you tell us about it?
I mean, this is what I've been looking forward to for most of my life, so I'm very excited about it. Like I said, I've been studying for this test inadvertently for, as long as I've been conscious.
Decades.
Yeah. So I feel.
So as long as you've been conscious, as long as you've been alive, you've wanted to come to America, and you say you wanted to be in a gun shop, but
minus a short period of time where I was really scared of sharks, and I heard that America has sharks. So
how fucking ironic and bizarre.
And then you went to work at
Shark Coast
Exactly,
Tactical.
yeah.
Shark Coast.
no, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my mom was like, "You want to go to America?" And I was like, "No, there's sharks there." And she was like, "Okay, then don't go to the beach." And I was like, "They can eat through wood. They could come out of the ground."
Really?
Terrified. I was 5 years old. Yeah. Other than that, no. But yeah,
They don't have sharks in the water off of Istanbul?
no, we don't have ocean. We just have seas.
There's sharks in seas.
Yeah.
Not in our seas.
Really?
I bet there's a shark in there.
It's like great whites.
Well, no, the Russian dude, or no, the Egyptian guy got eaten, where was it? Off the coast
I think it
of
was the Dead Sea.
the coast of Crimea, which is not too far from Istanbul, correct?
I mean, not too far in
It's just across the sea.
global sense. Yeah.
It's just across the sea, though.
As far as I know,
So, I mean, in theory, a fish could fucking swim and eat you.
don't get me scared again, man.
So congratulations to Omar, and hopefully he passes his test and doesn't get deported, because it would really suck. Did the UPS people really piss you off there today?
Oh my god. I'm not joking when I say that was the most infuriating experience of my entire
What
life.
happened? So
So we shipped some stuff next day air, and they
do you think they know it's you when you call?
I have no idea.
I bet they do.
But we shipped something next day air. It didn't show up till 4 days later. So I'm calling just trying to get my money back, the extra money I paid for next day air. And I call and you get a robot. And I talk through the robot until it's allowed to transmit me to a human. I get with a human. I explain to them the situation. The human goes, "Okay, I got to get you over to the refund department. 1 second, please." I get put on hold. Then a robot picks up. So I talk to the robot. And then the robot transmits me to a human. And then the human tells me, "Hey, how can I help you?" I explain. They go, "Okay, let me get you to the refund department." And I get back to a robot. And then I talk to the robot and I get to a human. And the human says, "Oh, I got to get you to the claims department." And then takes me to a robot. So this goes on for about 9 or 10 times. At this point, I'm boiling. And I tell the real human being picks up. I go, "Hey, I need to get to the refund department. Please do not connect me to the robot. I cannot get through the robot. Please, for the love of God, just get me to a human being in the refund department." And she goes, "Oh, absolutely. 1 second, please." Robot.
Oh,
I go through the robot again, get a person, start begging the person on the phone, please, please, I just need a refund. I don't want to get another robot. Please, for the love of God. And back to a robot. And this went on for a while. And every single time I get connected either to a human or a robot, every single time the switches happen, which is probably 25 times over the course of the call, they ask me to repeat my full tracking number, my full name, the company I work for. I said the tracking number so many times on that phone, I've memorized it.
Yeah.
Yes.
shit.
And that is why we use FedEx,
Exactly.
because we have a person.
Well, with AI, you could have been talking to a robot both times. You wouldn't
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah, right.
The same robot just passing you back and forth.
So,
So if you, I don't mean to interrupt. So are you only allowed to take the citizen test once, or do you get like multiple times?
It starts your process over. So I'd have to
Okay.
wait probably 7-8 months if I
Okay.
failed it.
It's like taking the bar exam.
Yeah.
You fail it, you got to wait 6 months for the next bar exam.
are you worried?
Not at all.
You get kind of worried though. Like you're a fiery young man.
Of course, I overthink.
There's a very
like,
You're very passionate.
You're gonna make them nervous.
I overthink everything, but at the end of the day, if all the people that I know are citizens have passed, I think I'll be fine.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Is it multiple choice?
I don't believe so. No. They pull from 100 questions and ask you like I think during the last administration they only asked you 5 of the questions. I believe Trump has requested that the question amount is increased. So I'm gonna be.
Oh my God! You only had to ask 5 questions.
What gang are you in?
Tres agua.
Yeah.
There's one scene from Modern Family that I think is probably how it's gonna go, where Gloria from trains for like a full year to take her citizenship test and memorizes every single possible question. Then when she gets to the room has a U.S. flag, a portrait of the president with their name, and a portrait of the vice president with a name. And the questions they ask her is, how many stripes are on the U.S. flag? What's the name of the president? What's the name of the vice president? And she gets so pissed off because she studied all this time and the answers are all on the wall.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going to happen with me.
Could be. Be lucky.
Wow.
It's 7 and 6, by the way.
What, 7 and 6? What?
7 red and 6 white.
Oh, all right. I didn't fucking know that. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know. So Jeff, we've been thinking. I've been thinking a lot about. There's been a couple things that have happened here, and it makes me think about gun rights. And I think that I don't think we talk about it that much anymore. And I've been thinking about the word inalienable, and what exactly it means. Because the Constitution was written for us and gives us inalienable rights. So to firearms and to free speech, amongst other things. Like that's a right from God that we have. That's a right not from the government. And if you sit and think about that for a second, then it fucking made my head explode. Like there's so much that our present system isn't following if you're following the Constitution to the letter.
Yeah. So there's 2 ways to look at the Constitution. One way is correct and one way is wrong.
Okay, great.
And half the people in one particular political party look at it the correct way, and then half the people, and usually in the other political party don't. So the correct way.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah, basically. Sometimes the parties switch and people will move from back and forth. But there's always historically, even from a legal standpoint, you listen to different judges and things like that, law professors. There's 2 ways you can look at the Constitution. The correct way is every human being, and then you smush it down to Americans, basically, are born with a set of rights right off the bat. You come out of the womb. You have inalienable rights, meaning they're born to you. They exist just because you exist, whether they come from God or evolution or human nature or whatever. But you come out and you have these rights right away.
Now, what
they include.
Hold on a second. So coming out of the womb and stuff. So that would and saying that you just get them, that the universal or whatever. But
Right.
that's not the founders said from God.
Well,
Or
right.
do you not believe that?
I'm not saying I believe that. I don't believe that, but they say they come from God, but the word inalienable doesn't necessarily mean from God. It just means that you have them. They precede any sort of thing. So
Okay.
if you want to say God, that's fine. So we are born as human beings with rights. handed down to us from God.
Creator, God,
And
life, something.
Right. You have those rights just by existing. Those include most of the rights in the Constitution: freedom of speech, freedom of press, right to bear arms, et cetera, et cetera. So all your constitutional rights, you have them just by existing as a human being. The Constitution comes along and says, hey, you have these rights because you are a human being, and hey, government, here's what you can't do to infringe on those rights, because they have them already, and we're restricting you from infringing on those rights by creating the Constitution. So the Constitution is actually a restrictive document. It doesn't grant you things. It actually restricts the government and says, these rights people have, you government, you can't fuck with these rights. That's basically the correct way of reading the Constitution. It's two things. It's one, setting up a structure of government. This will probably be on the test. Three branches of three branches of government, checks and balances. So it's setting up an actual logistical system of government. And then it also spells out the inalienable rights that the citizens will basically have as human beings. And then it tells that government that it's set up what you can and can't do, which includes not infringing on these rights. So it's a restrictive document. That's the correct way to look at it. The other correct way to look at it is, we're not born with anything. The government grants you rights that they think you should have. So they'll read. I understand, but they'll read the 10 amendments. Let's say the first 10 amendments, and they'll say the only reason you have freedom of speech is because the government wrote in the document that says you have freedom of speech. The only reason you have a right to bear arms is because the document says you have a right to bear arms. Without that document, you don't have any of those rights. The government can do to you whatever they want.
And the government gives you the rights from the document that the government can take away.
Correct. Yes.
And one party has traditionally seen it one way, and then one party has traditionally seen it the other way, whether it's Democrats or Republicans.
Sure. Correct. Yeah. So conservatives are the ones who usually interpret it the correct way. And then liberals, Democrats, whatever you want to call them, usually interpret it the other way. I actually had a discussion. I used to have a law partner. He's a really good friend of mine, but we were literally driving in a car one day having this argument. And because he's saying, no, I only have these rights because the government gave them to me. And I'm like, no. You had those rights before this government even existed. So even lawyers of, the same age, the same background or whatever, have completely different opinions of how it's interpreted.
And either Jefferson or Madison took that, right? And who wrote that actual word?
Inalienable?
Inalienable.
That would have been Jefferson, because inalienable is actually in the Declaration of Independence.
And he took it from somebody else, right? Some European philosopher who was a little bit before
probably, and Nietzsche or somebody.
No, it was something. I think it was Locke.
Oh, Locke. That makes sense. Same kind of thing. A lot of it came from the Greek historical. They get a lot of it from Plato and Socrates, and the way the Greeks kind of gave us the original concept of democracy. So a lot of it was, it is a flow from Greek to Roman to England and then over to America. And it just kept growing and growing, because even in England at the time, they obviously still had a king. They didn't have a set up form of government, and all your rights were literally given to you
by the king right.
in England. And so, of course, when we kicked King George out, we said, no, we don't want to do it that way.
Which is why it's so easy. Which is why it's so easy for them to look at our rights with firearms with disdain, because they don't have the Constitution.
Right. Well, they look at a lot of our rights with disdain. I mean, you look at what's going on over there now with all the free speech stuff. I mean, completely, all the European countries have gone batshit crazy with their free speech stuff. They're throwing everybody in jail for tweets or X's, whatever the hell they call them now, and Facebook posts and protesting in the streets, because they don't have a First Amendment in their Constitution. They have some freedom of speech language in their parliamentary constitution document that they drafted over in places like England and Germany, but it is literally a permissive document. Because it was a king.
So what you're saying, ours is restrictive.
Correct.
Which is a big deal, because it was put down by our founders as a restrictive document.
Right.
Which you're saying that, hey, this is all people born in this land get this.
Right.
And you can't fuck with this.
Right.
That's who we are. That's what we are as a country. Whereas it's permissive, right? We're king, parliament,
right,
country, affords you the right to speak freely.
Correct.
And thus can take it away.
Yeah, so not to get in a history lesson, but obviously if you think about it, they had a king, and the king gave you all your rights. So pick England. They had a king that gave you all their rights. Eventually, they morphed from having a strict monarchy into like the parliamentary procedure that they have now. But historically, they were used to only getting your rights from the king. So that concept simply moved from one governing body to the new governing body, and then they created a document that said, well, we're going to give you these rights just as if we were the king. You're just getting them from the parliament instead of the kingdom. We completely rejected that concept, which is why we fought a war and kicked them out of the country and said, we don't want to do it that way. We don't want a permissive one. We want a restrictive one. So that's why the founding fathers in their brilliance were like, we have to completely change this from top to bottom, because we are not going to do permissive like they've been doing over there with the king. We're going to have a restrictive one, and we're going to say all your rights come from God. Government, don't fuck with those rights. Complete opposite of the way it was in England, opposite. Because the king allegedly came from God. You listen to all those kings, and they were like, oh, I'm here, I'm king because God made me king, sort of like the Pope concept or whatever. So there was an understanding that all the laws that the king gave me were the laws that came from God. It spoke directly through the king. That's kind of the way they brainwash people or set it up over there. Our founding fathers were like, no, that's a stupid system. We're not going to do that. God gave you your rights. And when we set up our brand new system, there'd never been a three branches of government type system. It was brand new on the planet. We're also going to make it restrictive. So from a historical standpoint, it's easy to see that the only correct way to interpret the Constitution is as restrictive. Just from the historical context, from their writings, from their speeches, everything that we know about it, that was the entire point of the Constitution. So anybody who wants to sit here and say, no, you only have a freedom of speech because we gave it to you, they're just pulling out of their ass, because that's the way they want it to be.
So the term is restrictive, and the original founders formed the document as a restrictive document, not a permissive document.
Correct.
Which puts all of them,
right,
their arguments in the toilet.
Right. So just read it. Here's how the line starts. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, freedom of press. It's clearly restrictive. It doesn't say we hereby grant the citizens the freedom of speech. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. That clearly means that the freedom of speech is there already, and Congress shall not do anything with it. Same thing with the Second Amendment. It shall not be infringed. It doesn't say we give you a right to have a gun. It says your right shall not be infringed, which is acknowledging that you already have a right and the government can't infringe on it.
So they're talking about Congress infringing, or the government.
Correct, the government in general. It says Congress, because Congress are the ones that pass the laws. So the way our system is set up, again, it's going to be on the test. Congress passes the laws, the president signs them in and enforces them, and then the judicial interprets them. So it didn't need to say the judges shall make no law or the president, because the way the structure is set up is only Congress can make the law. So they all say Congress shall make no law abridging these inalienable rights. And then in the 14th Amendment, not to get too historical, originally it only applied to Congress, because it literally says Congress, which means the states could do whatever the hell they want. So back before the 14th Amendment was passed, only Congress couldn't take away your free speech, but the state of New York could do whatever the hell they want, because the Constitution only applied to the federal government. The Civil War comes, slaves get freed. All the states are saying, well, slaves, we're not going to give you the right to vote or free speech because we still hate the fact that you're slaves. And so they passed the 14th Amendment, which literally says the constitutional rights are now extended to the states as well, which is why the state of Florida also can't now infringe on your right to free speech or right to freedom of the press, because the 14th Amendment does that. Well, this is the issue with the Second Amendment, because it's basically literally the only amendment that has the latitude that it has. Like if a state tries to ban a newspaper, they'll get sued to oblivion and they won't be able to do it. But you ban a high capacity magazine and it's okay. Historically, courts, because they're the ones who interpret the laws, have just given a wide latitude for gun stuff. They've just treated it differently than any other right. They just have. Courts have. It's basically the courts, because again, they're the ones that interpret the law. So courts historically have just been really expansive when it comes to infringing on the Second Amendment more than any other right.
Now, Omar, when you're the closest to high school out of all of us. When you were taking like basic American history and stuff like that, did they get into this at all? Like where the government came from, where the Constitution came from, what the Constitution means, what your rights mean, stuff like that?
Brief overviews of it, but nowhere nearly in depth as this. Like they explain to you that, the Constitution sets up the government, but they don't go into restrictive,
permissive, restrictive,
because
inalienable.
Just like he said, you can have two lawyers who went to the same school that interpret it differently, even though on the surface it's very confusing for me because like when I read it, shall not be infringed is pretty fucking obvious, but people interpret it in different ways. Right. But I mean, even it's crazy to think about. Just 3 months ago, the president of the United States was saying, well, the Second Amendment, nowhere does it say it has to be absolute. You couldn't own cannons, which is false. You were encouraged to own cannons. Mm-hmm. But I mean, imagine taking that and applying it to any other constitutional amendment. No, nobody ever said the freedom of speech is absolute, which they're trying to do with the whole hate speech thing. But like, extend it to anything else. Nobody said the right to no quarter was absolute. I mean, one soldier can sleep in your bedroom.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all of them are subject to interpretation. And then the issue is they change depending on who the court is or who the judge is or who the Supreme Court. You can get one judge that says this is an infringement. Another one says it isn't. It goes up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 1985 says, yes, it is. And then you could have the same topic come up in 2025 and they'll say, no, it's not. I mean, we just saw that with abortion just a couple of years ago. So because it's based on case law, which is an interpretation, a lot of it is politically based. It depends on who the president is, who the judges are, who are listening to it. That's why they file all their lawsuits in California on the West Coast, because they're liberal judges out there when the gun people want it. All the pro-gun people file their lawsuits in the
North
South
Dakota.
because they want to get the conservative judges because they're in the South. So, it's a system of men. Not to get too philosophical, but men aren't perfect. And when I say men, nobody fucking at me talking about the ethereal men, humans. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. They can interpret things. They can have different opinions. So whenever you have a system, no matter how tight you try and make it in paperwork, if the system is run by man, you're always going to have all these problems with it. But it is unfortunately the one right historically that has been infringed upon, and the infringements have been upheld more than any other right.
To answer your question a little bit better, Will, if there's any sort of debate about it, even if there shouldn't be, even if it's very clearly stated, if there is any sort of like debate about the subject at all, they pretty much don't get into details.
Yeah. If it's a quote, an opinion or whatever, they're just going to get into the facts, read this. They're going to ask you what the amendments are, but they'll usually never ask you what you mean, because then they'll get into interpretations and it just becomes a problem. That happens in law school. When you go to law school, you don't learn about the Constitution. Like when you take constitutional law, you don't study the Constitution. You study case law that interprets the Constitution. Okay. There's never a test on what is this amendment? What did the founding fathers say about this amendment? No, the question is, what did State versus Marbury say about the Fifth Amendment? What did the Supreme Court in Topeka versus Board of Education say about the 14th Amendment? Like, it's all case law and interpretation from judges. Nobody goes to the originalist version of the document.
Then how did you get into it? Because you obviously have some acumen behind it. Like you seem very passionate about the Constitution.
Well, it's just evolved
from doing gun stuff.
Literally it has. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I was in college, like most people that go to college, I was way more liberal than I am today. I was younger. I was in college. I didn't understand it. When I was in law school, they had a gun debate, and somebody from the NRA came, and they had, a panel, and the students got to come and ask questions. And I was asking the NRA guy, why don't you just agree to ban assault weapons? I think people would be better, people would accept your organization if you would agree to ban those, and then they might be looser on the other. And the guy's giving me the whole, well, what's an assault weapon? And now here we are, 30 years later, and I'm the guy going, well, what's an assault weapon? Why would I ban an assault weapon? So I came out of college like everybody else does, with more of a left-wing slant. And then I went to work at the state attorney's office as a prosecutor. That's where I started to hate the government, because I was right. I was working for the government, so you come out all idealistic, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna catch the bad guy and put the bad guy in jail, and then when you realize the bureaucracy that it is, and you see the violations that go on, and you're like, I can't do this, and you're taking orders from this supervisor, who's then got to go talk to this supervisor, who then's got to go talk to that supervisor, all about somebody who might go to prison for the rest of their life, and it's like this freaking bureaucracy going on there. So I started to get pretty anti-government or bureaucracy at the time. So I started my own practice. As you know, when you own your own business, you tend to become more conservative because you're like, these fucking taxes I got to pay, and I got to get these permits, and why the hell do I have to pay a city tax? I got to pay a county tax. I got to pay a state tax. I got to pay my bar exam due or my bar dues. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So that, of course, makes you more conservative. And then when I got into the gun stuff, that just pushed me, over the edge. And so that's when I started really reading the Constitution, listening to all the conservative podcasts, the, Shapiro's, the Bonaginos, the whatever. And then you just kind of learning all that stuff. And I started reading a lot more about history. And then I remember all my stuff from law school, but I look at it through the different perspective and the different lens that I have now. And it just really opened my eyes to everything that's kind of wrong with the legal system in general, the school system, certainly the secondary school system, like the college system and the law schools and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of just shoved me into that camp, and then I've been there ever since.
See, as a gun shop owner, I've always treated, people who get conditional nons, people who get non-approvals, as people who have broken the law in some way. And it's like, I used to sell cars, and it's people who have bad credit. People who have bad credit, if you in the car business, if you pop a 300 to 400 credit score, you're just like,
yeah, right, yeah.
And you treat them like a subspecies of people. And it's kind of the same thing in the gun business. Like, people come in, they can't buy a gun. You're like, you're a fucking douchebag.
Right.
But the same, like, they're still people.
Sure.
And they're still people, and they're still like where's the Constitution with those people?
Right.
Now, of course, I would never sell a gun to a felon or somebody who has, for whatever reason, their background check is delayed.
Sure.
But still, like that seems to be against the Constitution.
Right.
Once you think about it, and especially too, the thing I've really been thinking about is like kids. And when I say kids, I mean people who are 18. People who are 18, they used to be a good part of our business. We've talked about it before.
Sure.
And then after
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas,
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, they can't. And then now, so kids come in here and we don't even let them in. Like, you've got to be. We won't let you in unless you're 21 because you might get somebody to buy you a gun.
Sure, yeah.
You might be a Fed and buy ammo. Something might and because the Feds are always trying to entrap people. So. But still, it's how can it just thinking about it more and obsessing about it. I got into my head. I'm like, how can it even be possible where someone who is an adult, someone who can get a tattoo, someone who can get a sex change operation, someone who can
vote, join the military,
vote, smoke, drink, not
no,
drink,
you can't drink, but yeah,
can't drink, but and that's not a law though. That's not. But how can you when it's supposed to be inalienable?
Right. So the simple answer I can give you is that it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Right.
But is anybody fighting for it?
No.
Like, nobody gives a shit.
No.
What do you think, Dean?
I went off. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't think
Dean has people should have.
Yeah. Dean has a different perspective. Like, Dean's brother got shot in
West Philly,
in the foot in West Philly. Like, Dean's from a pretty rough area.
Sure.
Dean had a drive-by, when he was younger, and had his mother jump on him when someone was shooting in the neighborhood. He's seen people shoot at cops, and
sure.
So he's got a different perspective on it. But still, it's inalienable. But it's like, so what do you think, Dean?
I really just think certain people can't have them and shouldn't have them because some people just can't act right with them, and just allow everyone to have it. I think would bring chaos.
I disagree.
It's kind of like what you see in hoods and low income areas,
right? But
they have them,
but they can't buy guns anyway.
But they have them
they
anyway.
Still have them, right? The issue is
so Dean,
go ahead.
I get it. Let's take it for instance right now. You're talking about okay. So you're saying, well, I don't want bad people to have firearms. Bad people have them. Like the people who are getting killed in Chicago right now, the people who are getting killed in Philly, the people who are getting killed everywhere where there's high homicide rates due to firearms, they're all people getting firearms illegally.
Now imagine,
and they would get them anyway.
The ones that don't have them, that are still probably shouldn't have them, they can just come to the store and buy them. It'll put more evil people with bad weapons.
Well, like, okay, so then how do people get fentanyl? Well, all right, so same idea. Like, so okay, you don't want people doing drugs, so ban all drugs. Okay. Drugs certainly aren't. It's not hard to get drugs, apparently. And then we have 100,000 plus people dying a year from fentanyl. So fentanyl's not supposed to be in here. Well, we banned it. Like the war on firearms. How'd the war on drugs do? It's not. It's a waste of time. But I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But
look at those places in like. I guess they were out in like California where they're just handing out free drugs, and how run down and shitty those places are.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm not saying
they were shitty before they handed out free drugs. That's why
I'm not saying drugs are, but I'm saying like the argument where if it would be chaos, then you're saying that if that the war on drugs is working. It's the same idea. Like okay, so you ban firearms, or you can't let a certain segment of the population have them. Okay, and this is just theoretical. We're just talking, theory basically. But what I'm saying is that same idea extends to drug prohibition. And I am 100% anti-drug. I'm not into fucking anything, including weed. You fucking hippies. But the people, there are no shortages of drugs. Like the cartels are more powerful than countries, and imagine if guns were completely banned in Florida or in the United States, the cartels would get them in here, and they'd be making tons of money from it. They would fucking start making P80s.
Someone should make murder illegal.
Yeah, exactly. Stop killing people.
But the kid thing, like telling someone who is 18 they can't have a firearm, it seems fucking crazy. And then no one, is anybody actively trying to repeal that in Florida?
Yes. Yeah, there's several lawsuits going on right now about the 18 to 21, and those have been winning across the country. So whenever those, they've been filed, because we're not the only state that has that law. They've been filed in lots of jurisdictions across the country, and they've all been getting shot down. But they only apply to that jurisdiction. So one of these has to make its way up to the Supreme Court. And then if I had to take a guess, I'd say the Supreme Court's probably going to shoot down that concept and say that you can't put an age restriction on it. The only thing I'll say to the previous topic is that there's three things I'll say about that. One is, I think if you're a bad person, you're gonna get a gun anyway. I don't think there's good people walking around out there who would just buy a gun and do something crazy. And I don't think there's bad people out there who would do something crazy just because they can go to Shark Coast and buy a gun. They're either going to do something bad or not. The issue is raising people who aren't bad as opposed to giving them guns, number one. Number two, when you use the word bad, the problem is who gets to decide what's bad? We might be all able to sit here and say, yeah, if you're a psycho murderer, that's bad. But Joe Biden would probably tell you anybody who went to the Capitol on January 6th is bad and shouldn't have a gun. So some people might say anybody who believes in, abortion shouldn't have a gun because they're crazy as well. So when you come up with a concept of, well, some people just shouldn't have guns, now you're back to, well, the government is giving you your rights and deciding who's some people and who's
permissive
not some
versus
people.
Restrictive.
I don't want them to have that power. That's number two. The third point is I'll take it. This is my legal point as the lawyer. If that's true, none of that has to do with the Constitution, because the Constitution says shall not be infringed, period. It doesn't say shall not be infringed, comma, unless you're a bad person, comma, unless Nancy Pelosi thinks you shouldn't have a gun. It says period. The founding fathers, in their ultimate wisdom, gave us a way to fix that. You can amend the Constitution. Going back to your drug thing, they thought nobody should drink alcohol. So they passed a constitutional amendment that says nobody gets to have alcohol. After 10 years, they realized that was a bad idea, and they passed another constitutional amendment appealing that constitutional amendment. So if enough people think that shall not be infringed is not correct, that it should have a comma with a bunch of qualifiers after that, felon, domestic injunction, Baker Acts, whatever, there's a process for that. You amend the Constitution, you amend Amendment 2, and you put in all your qualifiers. That's the process. So regardless of whether we all want bad people to have guns or not have bad guns, the issue is that's not the process. It's just like abortion. You could say, I think people should have the right to abortion, but the process isn't to get judges to say, oh, abortion's in the Constitution when it's not. The process is to amend the Constitution and put a thing in there that says abortion should be legal. So from a legal standpoint, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. What matters is you have to do it correctly, which is amend the Constitution, because as written, it says shall not be infringed.
Here, here.
One thing I want to add.
Nobody wants bad people to have guns. Yeah. I don't want bad people to have guns, but how do you stop bad people from getting guns? Making me fill out a 4473 isn't going to save anybody on the street because I'm not going to shoot anybody with my Shark Coast gun. Which, by the way, some guy called me the other day from the other coast. I guess he had like bought a gun in a private sale, and the original person had bought it from you guys, and he just wanted to know, does he need to register it or what does he need to do? And he calls up and he's like, hey, he bought it from a Shark Fest, Shark Week, something Shark Toes. And I'm like, dick. Oh, I'm like, Shark Coast Tactical. Yeah, that's it. He's like an old guy. So I just thought that was funny.
We're famous.
Shark Fest. Shark Fest Tactical.
Have you looked into the history of gun control?
So,
like Dean, do you know that the 4473 only came out like when, Luke? When was it?
70s.
No, it was 93, right?
No. The Nix check was in 93.
Yeah, right. So the Nix check
with the Brady bill.
But the background check was in the Firearms Act or whatever it is of 1976, I think, or
86, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's the thing is, like, prior to that, you could walk into any hardware in a store in America and give them $50 and walk out with a gun.
Right.
Did we have a bunch of mass shootings? Did we have a bunch of drive-bys? Before all these laws, was the country in the shit show that it is now? No, you put in all these laws now, and it's more, quote, violent today than it was before. You have more mass shootings, you have more drive-by shootings, you have more gang activity. Is that because it's easier to get guns now? Well, no, it's 10 times harder to get guns now legally than it was before the Firearms Act was passed in the 80s. The issue is the culture. It's the ethics that people have. It's the morals that they're raised with. It's the breakdown of the home, the bureaucratic welfare state. You know, there's a long list of things that you can get into. That's the issue, because none of these things were happening when anybody and their mother could go to a high school with shotguns in the back of their pickup truck and park it in the parking lot. Did you have mass shootings at schools back then? Did they have to have fences with metal detectors? No, everybody just rode to school with their shotguns in their truck because nobody cared. You ride in a parking lot now with a shotgun, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So the issue obviously isn't guns and access to guns. It's obviously a deeper issue.
I also feel like the one thing that stuck with me about what you said, Dean, is how you said if everybody was able to get a gun, it would be utter chaos. I personally feel like if everybody had a gun, it would be a lot more peaceful than certain people having guns and being able to prey on the others that don't have guns.
In certain areas, I completely agree with that one. But like, say where I grew up, a lot of people had guns, and some people had them illegally, some people had them legally, and it was chaos. That's why my family ran from that.
Sure.
So I take from when I was younger to now, life is better. And then, so I was born in 82. So if that kicked in, 86 you guys said, and it was shit when I was 5, 6, 4. It was a terrible place. I never want to go back.
Yeah.
Don't want to live in a city. It's terrible. I think it's just different outlooks. We all come from different walks of life, but it was not good. It was not a good place. And a lot of people had guns, and that's how shootouts on the block that I lived on just started, because one guy, maybe he was an idiot. Maybe his gun was illegal. I don't know. But he got upset. Someone tried to defend. Next thing you know, bullets are flying around a neighborhood where we live. Kids play. It's not good.
But you go to a city in Texas, and everybody's walking around armed, open carrying, and nobody's doing drive-bys or shooting at each other. So is the issue the guns, or is the issue the culture, or the society, or the morality, or whatever of whatever city whatever city you're living in. So
could be culture. I would
think
agree
it's
with
the
culture.
issue.
Now, Luke,
The issue isn't access to guns. Statistically speaking, the guns that have the most, I mean, we all know this, it's a joke. The guns that have the most restrictive firearm laws in the country have the worst violence. The city of Chicago has more firearm laws than any other city in the country, and yet it has more shootings than everywhere else in the country. I would imagine the city that you lived in, because it's always the major cities, had some of the most restrictive firearms on the planet, yet all the shootings take place. You go to states that have open firearm laws and like the most least restrictive firearm laws, and they have the least amount of violence. So just statistically speaking, it's clear the issue isn't firearms and access to firearms. It's obviously something deeper.
now, Luke, you were raised by bears, right, in Michigan?
Yes, sir.
Michigan.
So in Michigan, what was it like there?
It's actually really not very restrictive at all. So like
Lots of bears.
lots of bears. No, I mean, I grew up outside of Detroit, which is a pretty dangerous city. I mean, I didn't grow up anywhere like Dean did, but
Are you from 6 Mile?
no,
It's 8 Mile.
11 mile.
11
I
mile.
was gonna say he's further out.
11 mile.
But I mean, Detroit is interesting because Detroit has no gun restrictions and it does have a lot of gun violence, which I don't know why people on the left don't use Detroit as a better example of why, people talk about Chicago, how they
Nobody wants to talk about Michigan.
Yeah, 'cause nobody talks about Detroit.
Detroit
Detroit hasn't been relevant since like '84 when
we're coming back.
the DeLorean was taken out of business.
No, but yeah, I mean, people don't really believe that, but Detroit really doesn't have any restrictions. Like you can get your concealed weapons permit, you can open carry.
Well, that's a restriction.
Well, I mean, not like Chicago.
Sure, yeah. It's not onerous, obviously.
and
New York or Philadelphia, any of the big cities.
Yeah, it's shall issue, so you can, you don't have to plead your
Beg
case
for permission.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's ever a time where firearm rights might be really infringed? Like, do you think it can ever come about? It makes me worry just because
They are now. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes me further than they are now. It makes me worried because obviously it's you and I both agree that the Constitution is a restrictive document, not a permissive document, and those rights are inalienable. But there is a great segment of people who believe that's not true.
Correct.
And there's a great segment of people who are being educated now to believe that's not true, which is it's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be a time where people say, you know what, maybe we get rid of them.
Yeah.
Closer than you think.
Well, there's clearly.
Well, wait, hold on, too. So Firearms Act of what was it, 1968?
Which one? Yeah.
So
Gun Control Act.
Gun Control Act of
Gun Control
1968 is directly related to the assassination of Martin Luther King and JFK.
Right.
Right. So which were government ops most likely.
We're supposed to be getting all those files. So
Right. But no, but so if you dive deeper into firearm prohibition or firearm restriction, they're all pragmatic.
Yes.
They're all pragmatic reaction. They're all reactions.
responses,
They're all
correct.
responses to tragedy that may have been government fucking made.
Well, some of them might be, but
And then not to mention the one in 34 where you had
that's what I was gonna say. The National Firearms Acts
then one in
was
30.
in response to prohibition when all the gangs started using shot-off shotguns and suppressors to murder all their other gang members.
But
so then you have the National Firearm Act that comes out and restricts those items.
In response to the Valentine's Day massacre.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I
It's all
guess.
response, yeah.
But looking back from looking at the FDR administration under a microscope, it's not that clean, and they did some dirty shit. You know what I mean? Like they did some dirty shit. They weren't very honest, and I mean, you could go into how we got into World War II, where the majority of the country was against getting into that war for whatever reason, and the government was into manipulating the American public into getting into the war, which whatever. I mean, if you really look back at the American history back then, the FDR administration was, I mean, like he
was a big lefty. Like 90% of the leftist
huge
concepts we have in the country right now are still a residual from his.
But for instance, I mean, they conned the whole American, like the whole American public thought that he could walk for 12 years.
Well, sure. But here, that just happened in the last 3 years as well. So that hasn't changed.
But historically speaking, all these laws have been enacted because of have been a response to either fabricated reason. Everything, it's all come from false flag stuff.
So I will go this far in saying that yes, every major firearm legislation, either statewide or national, has always been in a response to some incident.
Right. Every one of those.
I'm not going to say all the incidents are done by the government. You can go on.
But you could go into each one of those incidents.
Alex Jones's thing and probably have the same conversation.
Each one of those instances you can go into and dissect and see something where it's imperfect.
I'm sure.
And okay, and then so if you get in a big fight with your wife, you don't divorce. You process, think about it, slow down, and come to the table like adults. You know what I mean?
Well, thank God people get divorced, or I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage. So it's one of those things where some people don't get divorced, some people do. But just back to your original question about do I ever see a point where it could really go all? Well, yes, we are only one mass shooting away from another infringement. They've always been tied to something. So the National Firearms Act comes after all the prohibition and the gangster stuff. You have the 1968 Act that comes from the assassinations. You have the 70s Act that comes from some of the shootings they did have, like the guy in the bell tower at the one college. And then, of course, you had the 80s one, which was in response to a lot of the inner city gang shootings and the cocaine and the cartel wars that you had in the 80s. Our Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act was obviously a direct response to the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. The bump stock ban was a direct response to the shooting in Las Vegas. Talk about conspiracies, which we don't fucking still know shit about that case. Yes, we are only one tragedy away from another ban. Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, the assault weapons ban was a response to some of the assault weapons inner city shootings that were going on. All the school stuff that we see going on, metal detector, it's all responsive. So yes, we are only one major firearm event away from having another thing put into place. And not to get all political, everybody might be thinking, oh, well, it's not going to happen now because we got Trump in there. Look, Trump did the bump stock ban. Trump doesn't care about guns. That's good in one sense, because unlike the Democrats who care about guns and want to ban them, he doesn't care about banning them. He also doesn't care about protecting him. It just doesn't matter to him. It's not a business. It's not a tax or a tariff or whatever. So it's not on his
matters
agenda.
To his kids, though. Matters to his kids.
Yeah, but not enough to where he did a bump stock ban on his own last time and actually entertained some restriction legislation.
Agreed.
Pam Bondi doesn't care about guns because she helped write the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act, fought for it in court whenever lawsuits were originally filed against it, and still supports red flag laws to this day. Marco Rubio supports red flag laws. He's actually in favor of a national red flag law. Rick Scott passed the fucking Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act and signed it and championed it. So it doesn't matter who's in office, I guess is what I'm saying. If it's a bad enough tragedy,
it's bad enough,
and there's a big public sentiment to it, or crying kids or whatever on TV, it doesn't matter who it is.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Right.
And so just because we have the conservative people in there now, they're not extremely pro Second Amendment people, and they're not above kowtowing when something major goes along. So yes, I'm always worried that it's always incremental. It's incremental. It's the whole turning up the heat on the frog thing, and next thing you know, the frog's dead because he didn't know what was going on. It's all incremental. It's all illegal in my mind.
That's Omar's thing.
It's all illegal. Every gun law that exists on the books in anywhere in America, in my mind, is unconstitutional because it says shall not be infringed, period. Which means no restrictions at all. I don't care if you've got 10 felony convictions. Under the Constitution, you're allowed to buy a gun. I'm not saying I want somebody with 10 felony convictions to have a gun.
That person should be in jail.
Don't take me out. Right. The
exactly.
Way to fix that, correct.
Exactly.
The way to fix that is to not have somebody with 10 felony convictions walking around the street, assuming they're violent felony convictions.
Enforce the law; it corrects itself.
And it becomes, you get other issues because you know how many things are felonies these days. It's ridiculous. Like you said, somebody comes in, they have a felony. There's an automatic assumption that they're a POS because they must have tried to shoot somebody or beat a woman or whatever. No, you bounce a check. That's a felony. You have more than 20 grams of marijuana in your pocket. That's a felony.
Steal a thermal.
You get a fourth driving while license suspended. You should have a driver's license, but you don't murder anybody or whatever. That becomes a felony. So every one of us sitting here today probably broke 1,000 felony laws today. We just didn't get caught or nobody knows about it. So it's really easy to become a convicted felon. It's really easy to be 18 years old in 1967 and get pulled over in Podunk, Florida with a bag of marijuana in your car, and you end up doing 30 days in jail and getting a felony conviction. And now you're 75 years old, you got a wife, you got kids, you got grandkids, you own your own business, you haven't done anything wrong since 1967, and you can't buy a fucking gun. I'm sorry, that's wrong. And there's no exception for that. It doesn't say felony, these felonies. It says felony.
Violent felonies would be a good blanket.
It's still unconstitutional, and I would disagree with it, but it makes more sense because people assume if you have a felony, it's a violent felony, and it's not. The fact that you can lose your firearm rights on a domestic injunction, I've done domestic injunctions. It's a horrible system. It's a horrible system. It was intended to protect victims of domestic violence, and it is abused on a daily basis by whether it's women or men or judges or the court system to get injunctions against people who are not violent and should not be allowed to have their rights taken away. But you get your rights taken away in an injunction. Baker Acts. You could have a Baker Act from 30 years ago. You had a bad acid trip. You get picked up on the street. They put you in a Baker Act. The judge says leave them there for an extra couple of days. You get out. Again, 30 years later, you got a wife, you got a kid, you've had no problems in your life. You can't buy a gun because you got a Baker Act from when you were 19 and had a bad acid trip.
And you can't.
That shit is stupid.
And you can't defend yourself, which is an inalienable right. Right?
Well, you don't get a lawyer in those cases. That's what's funny about that. At least in a felony, it's a criminal case. You you do get appointed a lawyer to represent you. Mm-hmm. In an injunction case, since it's not criminal, you don't get a lawyer. In a Baker Act case, since it's not criminal, you don't get a lawyer. In an RPO case, a risk protection order, a red flag law, you don't get a lawyer. So they can take away a fundamental constitutional right from you, but you don't get a right to have a lawyer to defend yourself. You either got to pay money out of your pocket or do it yourself.
See, like, so 1934, the National Firearms Act, which is allegedly a response to the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Okay.
Yeah, all of it in general.
Okay. So that event, there's no proof, right? There's just a bunch of dead guys. And what they said was Al Capone's gang masqueraded as cops, shot 7 guys, killed them in a garage. But it could have been government staged. It could have been anything, and they used that as an impetus to form. But I'm just saying it's hypothetical.
I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility.
Hypothetical. JFK murder, MLK murder, RFK murder. Each one of those high-profile assassinations was impetus to the 1968 law, right? Or the 1968 Act. All of those are under suspicious circumstances. All of them. And all of those were used for an impetus towards more gun control. What if, what if Donald Trump got smoked? What if he got smoked that day? And imagine how upset there'd be a segment of Republicans, right? It's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, but then the Democrats would be really in favor of assault rifle. for that couple days, they'd be like, you know what? It's not a bad
idea. But it's not. It's exactly what you're saying. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
There could be a crazy act that could have been government orchestrated or nefarious individual orchestrated, which false flag, whatever, and then that be an impetus, right or wrong, for gun control legislation.
One thing I want to add to that, just peeling a little bit back the tinfoil hat, is the deep state, Illuminati, whatever you want to call the force of power that does not want guns because it threatens them fundamentally. That's a generational force. They don't necessarily have to manufacture an event. If they wait long enough, one will come up and they can just use it. So even if you don't subscribe to the whole idea of the government orchestrated the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, for example, it doesn't take long for something like that to happen. You just have to publicize it. I mean, put media attention on it. That thing they can definitely control. And then suddenly you've got public support, because it's all about how you frame a story. That it doesn't necessarily have to mean they made the event. They just have to make the story. And then they have public support and they have fear, which is the main thing that all of these restrictions come from, is fear. You just exploit. And that's the other thing is, like, in my opinion, if the gun control debate should be, should there be guns or not? And then you can get into how do you say no guns. Whenever you start getting into specifics, well, these guns are okay, but these ones are not. These ones are fine, but these ones are not. That's where it starts getting shitty. If you want to have a genuine, honest conversation about there should be no guns in the United States, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to make that happen. Pros and cons.
There's a process for that.
Yeah.
It's a constitutional amendment. Yeah.
Exactly. But when you go into, like, oh, assault weapons or high capacity, all these arbitrary things, 16-inch barrel, because we needed to sell fucking surplus
Fuck
on
that
one car.
16-inch barrel, goddammit.
That was 18.5, and they
Fuck
made
that goddamn thing.
that was 18.5. They made it 16 because they wanted to sell surplus M1 carbines. Like, all of this shit is completely arbitrary. What makes 10 rounds okay and 11 not? It's completely arbitrary, and it all preys on people's ignorance and fear
and ignorance.
Because, people fear what they don't understand. You tell someone this is an assault weapon, this is scarier than a regular weapon, even though it commits less than 3%. I mean, rifles in general are such a tiny, tiny amount of gun violence overall. If you're able to ban assault weapons, even though they cause less than 1% of all gun crime, well, it's very easy to pivot off of that and to go ban handguns because they cause the other 97%. Like, how do you justify banning assault weapons and not banning handguns?
You can't. This goes back to what I was saying about incremental. Even they know if they came out with a platform that said ban all firearms, they'd never win another election. Even they know that, because even a large majority of Democrats don't think you should ban all firearms. They're for every restriction that exists on the planet, but you won't even find a majority of Democrats that do that. So if they came out and said, we want to ban everything, they know they can't do that. That would probably never hold up under any Supreme Court. Even the liberal ones wouldn't say ban everything. So this is where the incremental comes in. So because they can't just ban it, they pick arbitrary numbers to pick around the edges. Let's get rid of this particular gun because that brings us closer to banning it. Let's get rid of this many bullets because that brings us this much closer to banning it. It's an incremental step to what I believe a small minority of them want it to be as a party. So they can gather up the troops to do these incremental things, waiting out for the time that something crazy enough happens that they can then make that leap over to here. Because even when you look at the 1934
It's the frog thing.
NFA Act, they didn't ban them. They didn't outlaw machine guns or suppressors. They put a tax on it. And they said, you can still have one, but you got to pay $200, which they knew most people couldn't afford in the 30s because they were in a depression. So it was a backdoor sort of ban. But even they knew in the 30s, even Roosevelt and all those people knew they couldn't just ban any of these firearms because they know that would be a violation of the Second Amendment. Even the Supreme Court, as liberal as it was in the 30s, would have said you can't just ban them. So that's why they came up with a backdoor sort of ban, and that's why it passed muster. Fast forward to the 90s, and they ban assault weapons outright. 10-year blanket assault weapon ban. That goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, yeah, you can do that. So in just that 60 years, they went from incremental to banned. All they had to do was wait it out. So that's what they're doing. They're waiting it out.
Who do you think about this stuff with, or do you just kind of get alone in your office and think about it? Or has it just kind of been a byproduct, like osmosis, through the time of you representing people with gun law?
It's just an interest. I mean, I don't usually talk about it with people. I listen to podcasts, I read books, I research. I mean, there's some online communities. There's a bunch of Facebook groups, concealed carry Facebook groups and MGT. So I like to talk about it in a social media setting. There are no other lawyers around here that do this. I'm still literally the only gun lawyer that's locally. I mean, I just got referred a case a couple days ago in a divorce case because there's a firearm related issue, and that divorce lawyer, who's been a divorce lawyer as long as I have, doesn't know nothing about it. So they sent it over to me because nobody learns the gun stuff. So I don't have any other lawyers locally to talk about it. I'm friends with some lawyers that are on the boards of like Florida Concealed Carry and the NRA or whatever. So sometimes I social media with them. Mainly, it's like any other hobby. You know, some hobbies you go, you know, play board games with the geeks on the weekends, and other hobbies you just kind of research and do it yourself at the house. So I like to talk about it here. I have my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I make my YouTube videos. Musings with MGL, by the way, is my YouTube channel. Please go like, share, and subscribe. So I like to muse there about Second Amendment stuff, interact with those common people. I still do the weekly podcast with McGowan. So we talk every week about it there. So I get to shoot the shit with him about it. So it's just kind of like through social media and just
We got to have that
things
guy
like
on
this. Again. Oh, yeah. You know, Mike's great.
Hey, Dean, I want to just say that I respect and empathize with your experience.
Absolutely.
Like I don't think no one.
I grew up in Venice, Florida. I have no idea what you're. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
I thank God for that.
Yeah, I mean, I respect and empathize with like your background, and I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you.
Like you're one of my. I mean, you know, I was told I have favorites, you know, when this chick who quit like a couple weeks ago, she was like, "You have favorites." I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? But I mean, you're one of my favorite people, man, and I'm really glad that you're here. And and none of us can understand what it was like getting fucking shot at, you know, as a kid growing up, and so I understand that, and I respect your opinion on firearms, even if we think it's against inalienable, but I respect and empathize with your background, man.
Agreed.
And same back to you guys, because I am not anti-gun, obviously.
Right.
It's just like I said, just certain people.
But
it does suck.
You're anti people who suck at video
life.
games in life, right?
At life, yeah.
I'm anti a lot of people. It doesn't have to do with guns. It's about, I always used to say, but 90% of the people on the planet are not worth knowing.
True.
It may even be higher.
That's Steve.
Dean, if in your mind, from your worldview, given your background, how do you think you should determine who can be trusted with one?
He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't give a, he doesn't like Dean doesn't think about stuff.
You
like
pass
that.
the background check. Here's your gun, and give me your credit card. Yeah.
Do you think it's a background check thing? Like,
I don't have all the answers to it.
Yeah, see?
No, I'm just saying that's his job. He's
Yeah,
like,
he don't give a fuck.
yeah, right. You pass the background check. Give me your credit card.
Like Dean's really into like the stuff that he's into and living and doing his thing, but he doesn't think like too deep about shit. He has an opinion on something, and that's how he rolls.
Yeah.
Am I right, Dean?
At 100%.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
He doesn't get it too deep because he would rather take the time thinking about it, putting it to something more constructive. Like Dean's the type of guy that wants to learn and master the bass. You know what I mean?
Nice.
He wants to learn and master. Like, didn't you learn and master, or not? Maybe not necessarily master.
No, not master.
But the violin.
Yeah, violin, bass. Now I picked up guitar now, so I'm doing bass and guitar. At the same
bass, cooking, violin, fucking MMA, shooting. Like your DPS at video games is crazy.
Yeah, video games. Yeah.
But those are his interests. That's the way everybody is. Like, this is one of my interests, so that's why I know a lot about it. You ask, somebody comes up and asks me about, I don't know, green energy, and I'll have no fucking clue what they're talking about because it's not something that I'm interested in.
You're not passionate about it,
right? I have most people have the 2 or 3 passions in their lives, and they know everything about it. You get outside of that, they don't care.
I think that it's evident that there's a large segment of our government that's corrupt, and it's definitely coming out more than ever, and it's becoming popular knowledge. And I think that restrictions are based upon what the government finds in people, which might come from a poisonous tree, which might come from the government not doing the right thing, and I think that our rights are like human, or the people of American, our rights are infringed upon by the government, and it's freaky. Like the fucking January 6 people, like what if Trump wouldn't have won, and those 3,500 fucking people sat in jail, or 1,500 people for fucking going to a protest? You know, that's, I mean, like I really want to get some of the January 6 people on. It's an insane thing to think about. What do you think, Omar, about the January 6th thing?
I don't have too solid of an opinion one way or another. I think it's really cool that they sang the national anthem every night.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's political prisoners. That's all it is.
Political prisoners?
It's something I'm very familiar with coming from my country because it's regular practice over there to have political prisoners. It's insane to see here, and it's very terrifying.
Exactly. It's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, regardless of what your opinion on January 6th is, the idea that you can round these people up for something that you deemed as bad. And I'm not saying it's bad or not, one way or the other. Just the fact that you can make that decision and without due process.
You can arbitrarily make that decision and turn normal people into political prisoners, which is what happened.
Yeah. And again, this is something I'm very familiar with and seen a lot. And seeing it over here fucking irks me.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Anything Turkish I see in the U.S. is fucking terrifying.
Except shotguns.
No, that's still
They're
terrifying.
Yeah, for a whole nother reason.
For a whole other reason.
But you see what I'm saying? So the government corruption is evident. Government corruption can lead to government restriction. Restriction sometimes is based in corruption.
Yeah.
But no matter what, the government is not supposed to be restrictive. The Constitution is supposed to protect us from the government.
Correct.
Which it doesn't do. Which the Constitution is trampled on, and our rights are, like, for instance, like the fucking January 6 people, like the First Amendment. You have the right to free press. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to protest, which you could interpret it was what you trespassed in an area that you paid for.
I mean, you're speaking to me, who I had an idea of America before I actually came here and started looking into current day politics. I would read the Constitution, and I had this idea imagined in my head of exactly what that entails, and it's far from the truth, and it is, kind of painful because. This is it. This is the great experiment. The United States is one of a kind, and it probably will be one of a kind for my entire lifetime, and probably many lifetimes. And seeing that even this is being corrupted, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. Is if, in my opinion, the U.S. Constitution is damn near perfect. It's definitely the closest thing to perfect we've ever gotten. And if even America, the country that the Constitution is written about, is not fully abiding by the principles of it, it's a scary thought, because this is the only country where we the people is a concept to this day. No other country has that. No other country has.
It's amazing, right?
Oh,
it's amazing that still to this day there is not another country like us.
It's the reason we're the greatest nation on earth. 100% it is.
Well, it's the worst system in the world, except for all the others.
Yeah. I love that quote.
That's the only way you can say it. And just to bring the entire conversation back to full circle, man is not perfect. So why should any system that's run by man be perfect? It's not possible. You can strive for perfection, but you're never going to get there. I mean, the country from the founding, it could be the best country in the world, but obviously we have bad things in our history. It took us a while to get where we are now. We had to fix a lot of things and change a lot of things around. We still have a long way to go. All we can do is aspire to be perfect. But as long as it's run by human beings, there's always going to be corruption. There's always going to be misinterpretation, malfeasance, fraud, whatever you want to call it. Like there's just no way to get around it. All we can do is just, try and hold firm and keep the line on what we can keep the line on and see how it shakes out. Buy more ammo. That's what I just tell people. Yeah. What are we supposed to do? Buy more ammo. That's always my advice.
What were you going to say, Luke, a second ago?
I was going to say, in regards to the January 6th thing, and how many feds were there? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many was...
talk about a possible setup by people looking for an event where they can restrict things.
Exactly. I just feel like I hope there'll be more information out on January 6th, like the JFK or whatever else.
Yeah, it'll come out the same time Epstein's list comes out.
Never come out.
We're never getting Epstein's list. First off, I'm not sure there is a list. Like, I don't think you're going to find a list that says Bill Clinton, January 13th, 12-year-old girl. Like, it's not going to be something.
No.
Hypothetically, I'm not making accusations. Nobody sue me. I'm just saying, I don't think you're ever going to find a list. I'm not sure a list like that ever existed. If it did, it's long gone, and you're never going to get it.
I did that in I talked about that on the live video not too long ago. Like I said, like everybody was pissed about the Epstein list not coming out, about her giving, Pam Bondi gave a binder to it's conservative influencers.
Yeah, it was all the podcasters and all those.
Yeah,
people.
and it was it was his phone book that was been out for since 2015 or whatever.
It was still redacted in it.
Yeah, and stuff was still redacted.
Yeah, and I like my whole thing was like that stuff's never going to come out. Like the ruling class is different.
I'm not even sure it exists anymore. Like I said, if it existed, it was probably on some guy's computer that's at the bottom of the Mariana Trench and was put there years ago. Like it's not gonna. If they couldn't find Hillary Clinton's emails when they had all the fucking servers, they're not gonna find this guy's list when they don't even have access to it anymore because it's been 7 years.
What I said was, if there's like just my opinion of the government is just assume the worst. That's a good way. Assume like the worst of.
They're not
worst.
on your side.
They're not, and if there is information about so and so being with so and so on Epstein's island, then nothing good happened. Like you were hanging out with that guy on his plane going to his island, nothing good was happening because this whole deal was. We know that he was probably some type of asset, some type of intelligence asset, and doing probably some type of blackmail thing, and like so his whole gig was like if anybody was hanging out with him, they weren't talking about fucking video games, they weren't talking about football,
right?
They were doing something that would lead to him having an advantage, which was bad shit. So just assume the worst,
sure,
and leave it at that.
I've been thinking about this for a very long time of like, what is it fundamentally that differentiates a person on the left to the person on the right? And I think a lot of it comes down to the information that they're given. I feel like a lot of conclusions that leftists come to are critical thinking, not the general public, but like people who think about it and decide to be a Democrat is usually the critical thinking conclusion you would come to if presented with the information that they believe is true. I think at the core of it, what it comes down to, a big part of it is, do you believe that the government is good or bad? Do you assume the worst when it comes to the government or the best? And I think that's the biggest divide that gets people who actually look into subjects to go one way or the other. Because a lot of people that I talk to that aren't just, vote blue no matter who, but actually like to look at issues and somehow end up on the left, what I see a lot of them, especially with this whole Doge thing, is they genuinely believe that if the government is saying they're doing something, that they're doing that one thing. And a lot of the time, they have no knowledge of things that the government has done in the past. I think things like, immense government malpractice, like name any of the thousands of them that we know about or any of the trillions that we probably don't know about, like the app, what's that? Whatever it is, if you genuinely believe in your heart that the government, USAID is actually helping people and it's, because the government is good. Of course, it's aid. That's what the government does. If they get money and it's for use with aid, then it's a good thing, and you're trying to take that away. That's the conclusion that they come to because they assume the best when it comes to the government.
Yeah, and I think it's a lack of studying history. Like, you look at history, you realize like how much fucked up shit like the government's done, and other governments, not just the U.S. government, but governments throughout the all over the world, and things from the history. Like, look at the history of America. Like, we fought this most powerful government ever. Mm-hmm. They took over the whole world and we still beat them. Like, that's why we have things like the Second Amendment, like the First Amendment. And I think that a lot of people nowadays don't really know about that. They learned a little bit about it in school. They don't really think about like how drastic of a situation it was, or they don't think about the impacts, and they don't apply that to politics today. And I don't know, that's my...
I get that. And I mean, the pattern that I see is basically, if you know what the Tuskegee experiments were, chances are you're going to be what's considered a conservative. And if you don't know what they were, chances are you're going to be what's considered a liberal, because you still trust your government. You haven't seen what they're capable of doing. It's the whole joke of like, if you ever find yourself thinking the government would never do that, oh yeah, they would. And that's what it comes down to, I think. If you are
But everybody should know what the Gulf of Tonkin incident was in Vietnam.
But they don't.
It's taught, though.
Not really.
Not really.
It's what it comes down to. Because I understand the people who are vote blue no matter who. I understand that they are fed information and just go along with it. They don't really do a lot of critical thinking about it. And that's fine. There's not a lot of mystery to uncover there. The people who I would consider critical thinkers, who actually look into issues, who actually go into it and somehow still end up on the opposite side than I do, I get very intrigued about, because what caused that? And I think a lot of it is, most of the time, they don't know about government malpractice, so they don't. It's an easier way to live to think that your government is actually trying to help you.
There's also been like being on the left. It used to be part of rebellion, being part of counterculture. Like that was rebellion.
Sure.
And that was question authority, question everything, and the conservatives were the enemy. You know, like there's history behind that, and that's just not the case anymore. Like the left is now like trust the government, and I think it started, like I remember, I don't know, but you would, because I grew up very liberal, and it was probably it was from early formative years, and then once I got to college, it was liberalism, you know, and then you wake up and you don't wake up, but you get out of college and you're like, oh, it's not really that way.
Yeah.
And you learn and you learn from the real world. But it's definitely, I think like I'm worried. I'm worried that the more and more I think about how they can take the basic right away from someone, and the more and more I think about how the government can entrap someone into doing something illegal, which happens a lot, it makes me worry about firearms. And I think just as you said, we are one mass casualty event away from them doing major legislation, and we forget, because we've had so many wins in the past year. You know, like the SB brace, or the pistol brace. Like that was such a big win for us. But like we forget like red flag laws. We forget you can't buy a gun if you're 18. We forget the bump stock. And then everybody argues about the bump stock. And believe me, I hate when people talk about Trump and then, whoa, bump stock. And I get it. But the thing I hate is that person just wants to argue. But, and it is, and if you get down to it, well, you know, fuck, man. Like that's an infringement, and you can't do that according to the Constitution. And so there's always going to be an element that will be okay with it. And we have seen throughout history that both sides of the aisle, with enough impetus, with enough reason, whether it's manufactured or what you're saying, a natural event that will occur, you give enough chaos, enough radicalization of people, a natural event will occur, which could be the impetus, which causes both sides to come together and form restriction, which has been historically the case. And it's terrifying because it's still there. It's still out there. It's just it's like a big fucking boogeyman.
At the end of the day, your elected representatives only care about, generally speaking,
getting elected.
So they're going to do whatever they perceive public sentiment to be. And all you have to do is just nudge public sentiment to throw it the other way. Just see how fast every major company went from being ultra DEI to anti-DEI just with the election of Trump. Because, right. I mean, Disney, Target, a trillion different things I can name right now. Overnight,
sure,
the public sentiment changes. Not necessarily the public sentiment, but the perception of public sentiment changes. All it takes is one event to nudge it the other direction, and everybody will go that direction.
It's like we're South Park or The Simpsons.
Yeah, we just don't have. I think the biggest issue is we don't have American values anymore. If you asked 1,000 people on the street what American values are, they'd all have different answers for you.
Right.
It's not part of the national identity anymore, so it's fluid. It can be moved around just by what the current thing is, or what the current populace, even if it's not the majority of them, whoever the loudest in the room is, that's basically what gets followed. Until you have an election where you can see what the actual majority of people believe and all that. But because we don't have an ingrained national identity and a national set of values of like, hey, we used guns to defeat the strongest empire in the world, and that's why we're free. That's not ingrained into our values anymore. Guns aren't part of an American value, even though they should be. And that's how you're able to have fighting and fluidity with it, where it swings one way or the other. I think the only true solution is to hard rock identify certain things that you can fight to defend in the face of these insane events that might happen, instead of just swinging with a pendulum and, public sentiment's this way, I'm anti-gun. Public sentiment's this way, I'm pro-gun.
I think that if you ever get into, I love how you said, you can tell if you're left or right by how much you trust the government. Mm-hmm. Most conservative people will, no, we don't trust them, and we know what they're capable of. Where other people are like, no, let's take a vaccine. Let's tell people not to go to work. Let's oodles and noodles over things. But for the last 4 years, they convinced us, not me, not you, but they convinced us that somebody who had clear mental decline was capable of running the most powerful country in the world. And in fact, as it's come out, is that it wasn't him; it was his advisors who were probably being controlled by Obama.
That's crazy to me. That's not what's talked about.
But it's been proven, right? It's come out, and so if they lied to us and got the whole country to go along with it, what else can they do?
What else have they done?
What else have they done? What else can they do? And what will they do in the future?
I mean, that thing that you just mentioned of he didn't even, straight up, Biden didn't even know what laws he passed.
Straight up.
You know about that, right?
No.
Yeah, he had a meeting with Speaker Johnson. He kept telling him that he did not pass a specific law. And he's like, yes, you did. And he's like, no, I didn't. He's like, yes, you did. Yeah. So he didn't even know that he had signed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
He didn't even know he didn't even grant the pardon to the Chinese sex trafficker. Right.
But he's literally Biden is like, no. What you're thinking about is this. I did this. And that's not what he did.
Yeah.
He straight up didn't know what he was signing. And that went on for 4 years. The amount of damage that can cause alone is, that should be a bigger talking point right now, in my opinion. But
sure.
And Jeff, tell us who you are exactly. So the people at home and people who are watching this video, they might need your services.
So my name is Jeff Young. I'm a lawyer. I practice in the 12th Judicial Circuit, which is Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto. I can also practice outside of that. I've had cases in Fort Myers, Tampa, Miami, Polk County, so I can sort of travel if I need to. And yeah, it's a firm that I've run now for 15 years in private practice. I've been a lawyer for 21 years. I was at the state attorney's office for the first 5 or 6 years, and then I've been in private practice ever since. I do criminal defense work. I do some divorce work. I'm not particularly a huge fan of it, but I will do divorces if people need divorces. I do criminal defense. I like to specialize in Second Amendment, so I pride myself on being, again, the only Second Amendment attorney in town, so I can help with stand your ground cases, firearm cases. I can restore your firearm rights if they were taken away. I can do appeals for your concealed weapons license. I can do appeals for denial of purchases and conditional denials. I can do red flag laws. I certainly do injunctions as well. So anything Second Amendment related at all, certainly call me, because I'm the only one who can handle it. But then if you also, if you happen to get a DUI or need to get divorced,
a little extra money on
you can call me on those as well. I'll take those as well. There's a lawyer in my office that does personal injury work. I don't particularly do it, but I have an office mate that does. So if you get in a car accident or whatever, you can call. Basically, if you have a legal problem, call me. I can either handle it for you. I can send you to the.
And what about your YouTube channel?
So yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Musings with MGL. It's on YouTube. I also have a Facebook page, Musings with MGL. I do a podcast every Thursday at 8 o'clock on that show with a guy named Mike. He's former special forces. He's a huge self-defense guru. We do a podcast every Thursday for an hour where we just talk about gun stuff. One week it could be about self-defense training. The next week it'd be some new law that got passed. We did one the other day about pocket dumps. We all just dumped our stuff out of our pocket to see who's carrying what and what you should carry, what you shouldn't carry. So it's a fun time.
We should do that.
Yeah, we drink, we talk about laws and all that kind of stuff. So every Thursday around 8ish, it's called Front Sight Press, but you can find it on my YouTube channel. And yeah, so I'm up to 8,400 subscribers at this point or something. It's not a huge amount, but it's a decent amount. It'd be cool to get to 10K.
You'll probably get more after this.
That'd be great. Yeah, please go there, like, share, subscribe, comment on my videos. So I pop out a video every week or two. Some of them are topical, like what did Trump just pass or say he's going to pass that's related to guns. Some of them are educational. How do you restore your firearm rights in Florida? What are the 5 most important laws you should know about carrying? So go on there. There's all kinds of information about it. And that's me.
Or you can just catch Jeff here when we have him on every so often.
I'm happy to come on whenever you want me to. As you said, I don't really have a lot of people to talk to this about, so it's really only these type of people and all that kind of stuff. So I'm always happy.
And we're going to call it. We want to thank Jeff Young for coming down. If you are watching this or if you got through our podcast, we appreciate you and value you. If you could, smash the like button, subscribe to us, hit the bell for notification. Check out our other social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, X,
Shark
TikTok. And we do this to help our internet footprint so we can increase our business so the people who work for us can feed their families and eat.
Same here.
And I appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again.
Take care.
Shark Fest Triangle out.
Shark Fest.
Shark Fest.